when you're responding to a call and there's somebody with a gun or there's a domestic case, what goes through your mind on your way there when you're driving to the location?
Any type of what we call a hot call like that, it's something that gets your adrenaline going. One of the first things we think about and that the community doesn't maybe think too much about is the fact that us getting there, putting the lights on, putting the siren on, getting there through traffic. That's a high tension situation already, because a lot of people, they see the blue lights, they panic, right? They don't know, do I stop here? Do I pull over right to the pull over left? So that's always a challenge. Getting there again, once you're on your way there, it's a matter of trying to get as much information as you can from our dispatchers. They're kind of our lifeline, because the people that are calling are giving the information to them. So we're listening. You're trying to listen clearly to what's going on, whether it's a description of the suspect or if the person had fled and stuff like that. Because now, on your way there, you got to look. Okay, well, the person fled in this kind of car. So now you're trying to not just get to the scene, but now you got to look for somebody that may have been fleeing the scene because they stuff like that. I relate when I used to train recruits when they came out on the road. I used to relate more of it to like when I played baseball. My coach always said, before the pitch is pitched, you think about your situation. Okay, there's a man on first. The ball comes to me. I'm gonna go to second, then go over to first. Whatever the situation is, I'm gonna check third, go to first. And that's part of the mentality is when you go there. Okay, I got to park somewhere safely. Try to figure out where I'm going. Park safely. Make sure I have all of my equipment that I need just in case. And then trying to find the location. And once you get there. Once you get there, again, it's one of those things that you kind of just, you kind of wing it, to tell the truth.
Yeah.
You go down there and you got to worry about whether it's an active threat type of situation where people are going to be running towards you, whether you got family in there screaming and yelling, or if the guy's barricaded and getting ready to take out a police officer. You never know. So there's a lot of things going on. I think most policemen, when you take the job, you realize that there is that possibility that you won't go home.
Have you ever been shot at?
Never been shot at. Been shot at. Been at a couple of standoffs where someone was had a gun there. Had a situation where I was actually talking to a guy who I had dealt with before, and when we finally arrested him, he was actually sitting on a gun. And then when we checked he was sitting in the garage, and he had 5 other guns loaded inside the garage in case he had to go grab them. Wow. So it was one of those situations. After I kind of calmed down, we arrested him and I hooked him up and we put him in the car. After I calmed down, I went and talked to him. I said, what was that about? He said, I was going to shoot you, but because you treated me with respect, and you talked to me, I decided I was going to wait for our crime reduction unit guys to show up.
Wow.
Because he believed that most of our crime reduction unit guys at the time, they don't always wear their vests. So I was going to wait for them instead because you were treating me with respect.
That's one thing I noticed about you too, bro. Your demeanor. You have a very calm and relaxed demeanor, and I could see how that would be helpful in a situation where you have to talk to somebody that might be mentally unstable. And that honestly kind of brings me to mental health, because a lot of times you talk about the criminal's mental health, but what about your mental health when you deal with these traumatic situations, PTSD, right? Most people associate that with the military and war and killing, but what a lot of people don't realize is that the unsung heroes of the police department and even the emergency workers, right? The firemen, the first responders, what you have to deal with. Sometimes you're going to a scene where somebody's neck is cut open or head's falling off or suicide or hostage situation. Like you're in the mix of that. And how do you balance your mental health when you have to go home to your wife and your family?
That's a good question. It's one that I get asked on occasion and stuff like that. The big thing is it helps when you have a group of people that you work with. There was a situation that happened a few years ago. I don't know if you guys remember it, where there was that gentleman that threw the baby over the freeway in Kalihi. It was a sad situation. But what had happened was, while the news was there, the news panned over to a couple of policemen who were talking and they were laughing. So there's a lot of comments made about, why are policemen laughing at this situation, stuff like that. But what people don't realize is that we need to find an outlet to release. And it's not necessarily laughing. It wasn't that they're laughing at that situation. You start talking about something else to get your mind off of it. Because you know what you got to do. But especially when you start standing there and you're waiting, standing over this body or standing over this situation, if you just look at it and you think about the family that's going to have to come and be notified, the family that's going to be seeing this person like this, what happened just before this happened? You know, did they leave on a good note with their family? So having a good a relationship with the guys you work with is really important. Knowing that you can look at someone and say, "Hey, I got to go tell the guy a joke, get his mind off of the situation." You know, police department does have a peer support unit as well. So whenever there's a situation like that, the police department offers help and people to talk to. And a lot of them are policemen, so you're talking to people that are policemen. And then we have psychologists and stuff like that. So
therapy, you need it.
Yeah. And, you know, and you know, to be honest, my wife is one that doesn't like the negativity in the world. So going home at times, you know, I have to watch what I talk to her about because it tends to bring her down.
Understand.
And stuff like that. So I reserve a lot of those conversations for friends that are in this situation and stuff like that.
Because you must need to let it out.
Yeah, you do. You know, and on occasions, you know, you go home, you walk away, give yourself some time, or you just go home late. You know, something like that happens. You go home, you go back to the office, you stay at work a little bit longer to kind of decompress a little bit before you go home and stuff like that. You know, again, it's having that strong support system where you work, that people, because, you know, a lot of times if I go and I talk to somebody else about it, I've got to explain everything that happened. You know, where you talk to a policeman, you can use your codes or your lingo and your short type of language to explain what's going on, and you can get through that without having to really delve too deep in the conversation. So, yeah.
Mental health. And you know, one thing I got to say, as men in our society growing up, talking about your emotions and your mental health, it was kind of frowned upon.
Yeah.
And then and a lot of people would shame you for that and make you feel like a weaker man, or you should actually uphold this certain, you know what I mean, persona and be strong. It's strong to not talk about your issues and your emotional health. But bro, this is something that I think society is kind of moving away from. I think that men are starting to be a little bit more open, and this is a good conversation to have. I can't imagine. It takes a certain person to do what you do. That's why I run a restaurant. You know what I'm saying? There were points in my life where I thought, I would want to do that, but no, absolutely not. I wouldn't be able to handle, I think, the trauma that you deal with. So thank you so much. It's an honor to be in your presence and to give you a platform to kind of tell your story.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, again, you know, you have these situations, and you know, even when we try to talk to young kids, especially now with the social media thing, you know, you try to talk to them about, you know, even just safe driving tips, driving habits. And I tell them, said, you know, you don't know what it's like to get into an accident. Oh, you know, yeah, I know. I see what bodies look like. No, but you see it on a video. You know, people take video. There's a very big difference from seeing an accident scene on a video versus being there and smelling the burnt rubber, smelling the smell of blood, you know, seeing what happens to a body while it's waiting for the investigators to come. And then knowing that, you know, the family's on their way. And then preparing yourself for their reaction was a big thing.
Do you have a hard time sleeping at night sometimes?
I think it's just because of my health.
Your health?
No, I've not to a sense where I think about the cases that I've dealt with. I think before I go to bed, I'm able to relax, or you go to the point where you're so exhausted that you don't have time to think about it. I don't tend to stay awake thinking about those cases. I know I go home thinking about it, and I know when I go back to work and I deal with whatever's got to be done to finish it up, or when you start talking to the people that were involved, you know, for whatever reason, whether it's investigative purposes or the relief, you know, you start thinking about it again. But I think over the years I've been able to adapt in that sense.
Okay. So, there's probably some people watching that are on the fringe or on the fence about becoming a police officer. What kind of advice would you give them?
Do it. I started pretty late in life. I do wish after I got in and started doing my job, I did wish that I would have started earlier. And I tell everyone when I do my presentation, I talk to people, I said, my uncle told me years ago that, if you find the job that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I know it's something a lot of people hear, but I can honestly say for 25 years doing this job, regardless of what I've dealt with, I never got up in the morning and said, I don't want to go to work.
Wow.
I just don't want to go to work. I mean, I'm not saying I'm jumping up and down and doing cheers because I get to go to work, but it was never one of those things that, oh man, I don't want to go to work. Maybe I can just call in sick kind of thing. For 25 years, I can honestly say I don't think there's a lot of people that realize how important that part is when you find a job, when you look for a career, because that's the thing that's going to sustain you no matter what you're doing at work. If you love what you're doing, it'll get you up in the morning.
Wow.
So again, it's a hard job. It's a hard job. It's an interesting job. People ask me why I got into it. I said, because I like to know what people are doing. You really see a different side of people, good and bad, with this job.